I'm David Kiley, Senior Correspondent with BusinessWeek.com. This week we're looking at the potential alliance and then maybe a merger between Chrysler and Italian automaker Fiat. And here to talk to me about it is Charlie Hughes. These days Charlie is an independent automotive industry consultant. He's also the co-author of Branding Iron, which is a terrific book about branding in the auto industry. And coincidentally, Charlie had a senior marketing position at Fiat when the company was in the United States about 20-odd years ago. Charlie, thanks for being here.
My pleasure, David.
So, Charlie, tell me about this deal. Why shouldn't we be very skeptical after we've seen mergers like Daimler and Chrysler and BMW and Rover sort of implode? Why should we think that there's a lot of good things that can happen from a Fiat-Chrysler alliance?
Well, first of all, I think skepticism in this case is probably healthy. We've learned a lot over the last 20 years in terms of how these mergers may or may not work. But I think there's some key differences to this one that give it a strong possibility of working. The most important one is that both of those manufacturers have a need. Chrysler is basically a North American-centric operation. Its products do not appeal in overseas market, which really limits it. It's not a global manufacturer per se. And Fiat, of course, is faced with pretty much the same situation, only its backyard is Europe. Now it's done some forays into India and a few other places and done reasonably well in South America, but it too needs a partner that extends its reach. And as it happens, Fiat just happens to have a range of vehicles that would help Chrysler tremendously. So in that regard, it could be a pretty nice marriage.
But now in terms of those products, we're seeing that the deal would call for Chrysler to essentially rebadge some existing Fiat vehicles like the 500 and some other things, and then co-develop some vehicles off Fiat architecture. Now, we've seen this movie before in the U.S. You've got GM selling a Pontiac Vibe, which is really a Toyota Matrix. You see Suzuki these days trying to sell an Equator pickup, which is really a Nissan Frontier. The American consumers never bite for these rebadged vehicles. Why would this be any different?
Well, I think for one thing, a key difference is there's only going to be one of them on sale at the opening bell, if you will. So there isn't going to be a Fiat version and a Chrysler version next to each other to sort of dispel the notion that it's a decent product for one of the brands or the other. So I think that's an important step. The other thing is, how do they execute it? I mean, if they execute it brilliantly, then it can work. If they do it the same way we've seen it played out before, meaning it's kind of a half-hearted effort, the quality's not there, the product really isn't geared for this market, then I think we will see history repeat itself.
So in other words, if Sergio Marchionne, the head of Fiat, and Bob Nardelli, the head of Chrysler, and Cerberus, the owner, if they do everything absolutely right, which we've never seen ever in the history of the industry, they have a chance.
Well, I would put it slightly differently than that. I would say if they do a good job of it, because there are parts of these platforms, and certainly parts of Fiat's engineering programs that are world class. I mean, they're now about ready to release a gas engine in the 1.2 to 1.4 liter area that will eclipse diesels in fuel economy. So all they have to do is not stumble on the obvious parts that people have stumbled on before, and we'll give them the benefit of the doubt now that the platforms, which sell very well in Europe. And by the way, something that most people won't believe is that Fiat, of the mass marketers in Europe, has the smallest carbon footprint of any of them, that they have some technology that will actually appeal to Americans.
So you are an optimist.
I work in the car business. Of course I'm an optimist.